My perfect life shattered when my husband dropped a bombshell that turned our world upside down. Now, I'm fighting not just for my marriage, but for everything I hold dear, including my children. I never imagined I'd be sitting here, writing about the dissolution of my marriage and the potential loss of everything I hold dear. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them, and mine came in the form of my husband's unexpected revelation. My name is Sarah, and up until a few months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I'm 33 years old, married to my husband, Mark, for 8 beautiful years. We have 2 wonderful children, our daughter, Emma, who's 6, and our son, Liam, who's 4. I always believed we had a good life together. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but I never once thought our relationship was in jeopardy. Our story began like many others. Mark and I met in college, both of us pursuing degrees in business. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love for indie music and obscure documentaries. After graduation, we started our careers, got married, and soon after, decided to start a family. I still remember the day Emma was born. Mark was right there beside me, holding my hand and whispering words of encouragement. When we heard her first cry, we both burst into tears of joy. 2 years later, Liam came along, completing our little family. Those early years were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and first steps, but we weathered it all together. As the kids grew older, we settled into a comfortable routine. Mark's career took off, and he quickly climbed the corporate ladder. I decided to take a step back from my own career to focus on raising our children. It wasn't an easy decision, but we both agreed it was best for our family at the time. I threw myself into motherhood, joining the PTA, organizing playdates, and volunteering at the kids' preschool. Looking back, I wonder if I missed the signs. Were there moments when Mark seemed distant or unhappy? Did I brush off his occasional moodiness as work stress? It's easy to second-guess everything now, but the truth is, I had no idea what was coming. It was a Tuesday evening when my world turned upside down. The kids were in bed, and Mark asked if we could talk. I remember thinking he looked nervous, but I assumed it was about work. We sat down on the couch, and he took a deep breath before speaking. "Sarah, I need to tell you something," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I've been doing a lot of soul-searching lately, and I've come to realize something about myself that I can't ignore anymore." My heart started racing. Was he sick? Had he lost his job? Nothing could have prepared me for what came next. "I'm gay, Sarah," he said, his eyes brimming with tears. "I've only recently come to terms with it myself, but I can't deny it any longer. I need to live my truth, and I want a divorce." For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. This couldn't be real. Mark, my husband of 8 years, the father of my children, was gay? It felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. "What?" I managed to choke out. "Mark, what are you talking about? We've been married for 8 years. We have children together. How can you be gay?" He tried to explain that he had been struggling with his sexuality for years, suppressing his true feelings out of fear and societal expectations. He said he loved me and our children, but he couldn't continue living a lie. As he spoke, a million thoughts raced through my mind. How had I not known? Had our entire marriage been a sham? What about our children? How would this affect them? "I'm so sorry, Sarah," Mark said, reaching out to touch my hand. I flinched away, still reeling from the shock. "I never meant to hurt you. I really thought I could make this work, that I could be happy in our marriage. But I can't keep denying who I am." I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process everything he was saying. Part of me wanted to scream, to accuse him of lying or cheating. Another part wanted to break down and cry. But mostly, I felt numb. "What happens now?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark sighed. "I think it's best if we get a divorce. It's not fair to either of us to stay in this marriage." And just like that, my world shattered. The days that followed were a blur. I oscillated between anger, grief, and disbelief. How could the man I thought I knew so well have hidden such a fundamental part of himself from me? I couldn't help but feel betrayed, even though I knew logically that Mark hadn't chosen this. I threw myself into taking care of the kids, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy for their sake. Emma and Liam could sense that something was wrong, but we hadn't told them yet. How do you explain to a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old that their daddy doesn't want to be married to mommy anymore? Mark moved out a week after his revelation, saying he needed space to figure things out. I was left alone in our family home, surrounded by memories of the life we had built together. Every photo on the wall, every piece of furniture we had picked out together, felt like a painful reminder of what I was losing. My parents were my rock during this time. They came to stay with me for a few weeks, helping with the kids and providing a shoulder to cry on. My mom, in particular, was furious with Mark. How could he do this to you? She fumed one evening after the kids were in bed. To just drop this bombshell and walk away from his family. It's not right. I appreciated her anger on my behalf, but it didn't make me feel any better. Mom, it's not like he chose this, I said wearily. He's going through a lot too. That may be, she replied, but he still has a responsibility to you and those children. He can't just wash his hands of everything. Little did I know, things were about to get even more complicated. About a month after Mark moved out, he asked to meet me for coffee. I agreed, hoping we could have a civil conversation about how to move forward, especially for the sake of our children. We met at a small cafe near our house. Mark looked different somehow, more relaxed, but also nervous. He fidgeted with his coffee cup as we exchanged awkward pleasantries. Finally, he cleared his throat. Sarah, I've been thinking a lot about our situation, and I've talked to a lawyer. My stomach dropped. I knew this conversation was coming, but I wasn't prepared for how it would make me feel. I think it's best if we start the divorce proceedings soon, he continued. My lawyer has drawn up some initial papers. As he spoke, I felt a growing sense of dread. It wasn't just that he wanted a divorce, I had accepted that was inevitable. It was the terms he was proposing that left me reeling. Given that I'm the primary breadwinner, Mark said, his voice taking on a businesslike tone that I'd never heard him use with me before, my lawyer thinks it's fair that I retain most of our assets, including the house. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What? Mark, that's our family home. We bought it together, we've raised our children there. How can you think it's fair to take that away? He had the decency to look uncomfortable, but he pressed on. I know it's not ideal, but financially, it makes the most sense. You can find a smaller place that's more manageable on your income. My income. The word stung. I had put my career on hold to raise our children, a decision we had made together. Now he was using it against me. But he wasn't done. There's one more thing, he said, not meeting my eyes. I'm going to file for full custody of Emma and Liam. For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. Full custody. What are you talking about? I'm their mother, I've been their primary caregiver since they were born. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I know, and you've done a great job. But I'm in a more stable position financially, and what? I snapped, my shock giving way to anger. He sighed. Sarah, I know you've struggled with anxiety and depression in the past. My lawyer thinks that could work in my favor if we go to court. I felt like I had been slapped. Yes, I had dealt with mental health issues, particularly after Liam was born. But I had sought help, gone to therapy, taken medication when I needed to. I had worked hard to be there for my children, to be the best mother I could be. And now Mark was using that against me? You can't do this, I said, my voice shaking. You can't take everything from me, our home, our savings, our children. It's not fair, Mark. He had the audacity to look offended. I'm trying to be fair, Sarah. This is what my lawyer recommends as the best course of action. I stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over my untouched coffee. Your lawyer doesn't know our family, Mark. Your lawyer doesn't know how much I've given up for this family, how hard I've worked to be a good mother. If you think this is fair, then you're not the man I thought you were. I left the cafe in tears, feeling like my entire world was crumbling around me. It wasn't enough that Mark had upended our lives with his revelation. Now he was trying to take everything, our home, our savings, and worst of all, our children. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyer consultations and sleepless nights. I found a lawyer of my own, a tough-as-nails woman named Linda who listened to my story with a mix of sympathy and determination. "We're not going to let him steamroll you," she assured me. "You've contributed just as much to this marriage as he has, even if it wasn't all financial. And as for the children, no judge is going to look favorably on a father who tries to use his wife's treated mental health issues against her." Her words gave me hope, but I still felt like I was fighting an uphill battle. Mark had the financial resources to drag this out, and I was terrified of losing my children. As if the stress of the impending divorce wasn't enough, I also had to navigate the challenges of co-parenting with Mark. We had agreed not to tell the kids about the divorce until we had a clearer picture of what was going to happen, but they weren't stupid. They knew something was wrong. Emma, always perceptive, cornered me one evening after I had put Liam to bed. "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy live here anymore? Is he coming back?" I felt my heart breaking all over again. How could I explain this to her without burdening her with adult problems? "Sweetie," I said, pulling her onto my lap, "Daddy and Mommy are going through some grown-up stuff right now. We both love you and Liam very much, and that will never change. But sometimes, even when people love each other, they need to live in different houses." She looked at me with her big brown eyes, so much like Mark's. "But why? Don't you love Daddy anymore?" I hugged her tightly, fighting back tears. "Of course I love Daddy. But sometimes love isn't enough to make people happy together. The most important thing is that we both love you and Liam more than anything in the world." As I held my daughter, I couldn't help but feel a surge of anger towards Mark. How could he think of taking these precious children away from me? How could he tear apart the family we had built together? The weeks turned into months, and the divorce proceedings dragged on. Mark and I communicated mostly through our lawyers, our once loving relationship reduced to cold, formal emails and terse phone calls about the kids' schedules. I threw myself into being the best mother I could be, determined to prove that I was more than capable of caring for Emma and Liam. I attended every school event, every soccer practice, every dance recital. I helped with homework, kissed scraped knees, and chased away monsters under the bed. But the stress was taking its toll. I lost weight, struggled to sleep, and found myself crying in the shower where the kids couldn't hear me. My parents and friends rallied around me, offering support and babysitting when I needed to meet with my lawyer or just take a breath. Mark, meanwhile, seemed to be thriving. He had moved into a sleek downtown apartment and, from what I gathered from the kids, was exploring his newfound identity. Part of me was glad he was happy, but a larger part felt bitter. Why did he get to move on and find himself while I was left picking up the pieces of our shattered life? The custody battle was the worst part. Mark's lawyer dredged up every instance of my past struggles with anxiety and depression, painting a picture of an unstable mother unfit to have primary custody. It felt like a betrayal of the worst kind, to have my mental health struggles, which I had worked so hard to overcome, used as a weapon against me. My lawyer fought back hard, presenting evidence of my active involvement in the children's lives, testimonials from their teachers and our neighbors about my parenting skills, and documentation of my successful treatment and management of my mental health. As the court date approached, I found myself becoming more and more anxious. What if the judge believed Mark's lawyer? What if I lost my children? The thought was unbearable. The night before the court hearing, I sat on the floor of Emma's room, watching my children sleep. Liam had crawled into his sister's bed, as he often did when he was feeling unsettled. They looked so peaceful, so unaware of the battle being waged over them. I stroked Liam's curly hair, so like mine, and felt a fierce surge of maternal love. These were my children. I had carried them, given birth to them, nurtured them. I had been there for every milestone, every triumph, every setback. How could anyone think I wasn't the best person to care for them? As I sat there, I made a silent vow. No matter what happened in court tomorrow, I would never stop fighting for my children. They were my world, and I would do whatever it took to protect them and give them the stable, loving home they deserved. The morning of the court hearing dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil I felt inside. I dressed carefully in a conservative suit, wanting to project an image of stability and competence. My mom came over to watch the kids, giving me a fierce hug before I left. "You've got this, Sarah," she said, her voice full of conviction. "You're a wonderful mother, and no one can take that away from you." The courthouse was intimidating, all marble floors and echoing hallways. I met my lawyer outside the courtroom, my hands shaking slightly as I clutched my purse. Remember, Linda said, her voice low and reassuring, stay calm, answer honestly, and let me do the talking unless you're directly addressed. We've got a strong case, Sarah. Don't let them rattle you. I nodded, taking a deep breath as we entered the courtroom. Mark was already there with his lawyer, looking polished in an expensive suit. Our eyes met briefly, and I was surprised to see a flicker of uncertainty in his gaze. For a moment, I wondered if he was having second thoughts about this whole process. The hearing was grueling. Mark's lawyer painted a picture of me as an unstable, financially dependent woman incapable of providing for our children. He brought up every instance of my past struggles, twisting them into something ugly and threatening. When it was our turn, Linda systematically dismantled their arguments. She presented evidence of my active involvement in the children's lives, my successful management of my mental health, and the stability I had provided for Emma and Liam throughout this difficult process. Your Honor, Linda said in her closing statement, Sarah has been the primary caregiver for these children since birth. She has put her own career on hold to raise them, a decision made jointly with her husband. To now use that decision against her is not only unfair but goes against the best interests of the children. Sarah has proven herself to be a loving, capable mother who has consistently put her children's needs first. Awarding primary custody to the father, who has been the secondary caregiver and is now going through a significant life change, would be disruptive and potentially harmful to the children's well-being. As we waited for the judge's decision, I felt a mix of hope and terror. This was it, the moment that would determine the course of my life and my children's lives. When the judge began to speak, I held my breath. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, the judge said, her voice firm and clear, I find that it is in the best interests of the children to remain primarily with their mother, Sarah. Mr. Thompson's attempt to use his wife's past mental health struggles, which she has demonstrably overcome, as a basis for full custody is both opportunistic and misguided. The children have a strong, stable relationship with their mother, who has been their primary caregiver throughout their lives. Joint custody will be awarded, with Sarah retaining primary physical custody. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The judge continued, addressing the division of assets. She ruled that the family home should be sold and the proceeds split equally, acknowledging my non-financial contributions to the marriage. She also ordered a fair division of our savings and other assets, rejecting Mark's attempt to claim the majority based solely on his higher income. As we left the courtroom, I caught Mark's eye. He looked deflated, perhaps realizing the gravity of what he'd attempted to do. Sarah, he began, but I held up a hand. Not now, Mark. We'll talk later, for the kids' sake. The following months were a whirlwind of change. We sold the house, and I found a cozy apartment near the children's school. Mark and I established a co-parenting routine that, while not perfect, allowed us both to be present in Emma and Liam's lives. Slowly but surely, I began to rebuild my life. I started working part-time, rediscovering my passion for graphic design. My relationship with Mark, while never returning to friendship, evolved into a civil partnership focused on our children's well-being. One evening, as I tucked Emma and Liam into bed in their new rooms, I realized that despite the pain and upheaval of the past year, we had survived. We were different, but we were okay. Mommy, Emma said sleepily, are you happy now? I smiled, kissing her forehead. Yes, sweetheart. We're all going to be just fine. As I closed their bedroom door, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The future was uncertain, but I was stronger than I'd ever been. Whatever came next, I knew I could handle it.